There's a new documentary comes out on the 26th. It's called Battle of the Sexes. It tells the story of Billie Jean King's famous tennis match against Bobby Riggs. So let me introduce you to the woman who between 1961 and 79 won 2 Australian titles, 4 French, 12 American and 20 Wimbledon titles. Ladies and gentlemen, Billie Jean King.
Hi, how'd you do? Nice to meet you.
That's almost like a centre court ovation. Almost like centre court.
I love theater and I love movies, so this is great. I never thought I'd be in this part of it. I'm always out there.
What's your favourite movie, Billie Jean?
What's my favorite movie?
Yeah.
I don't have a favorite. I'm always looking for new ones.
What's the best thing you've seen in the last 5 years?
5 years?
Yeah.
Yikes. You're going to have to make me think.
Shall I come back to you on that one?
Just start naming some movies and I'll tell you if I loved them or not.
You seen World War Z?
No.
Okay. Trainspotting?
That's the one I want to see.
Trainspotting?
Yes.
Everyone
keeps talking to me about it.
You've never seen it?
No, I haven't.
You definitely should.
I will.
It's because Robert Carlyle is here. You should meet him and then see Trainspotting.
I know, that'd be great. I already know about it, but I've read about it. But I know the kids like it. It's like a cult thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why I love those. Those are wonderful.
What's the worst film you've ever seen? That's usually an easier question.
Billie Jean is already thinking,
Why
I'm
am I
here to
here?
talk about my movie.
No, I'm not.
I'm not.
No, I love movies. I love to talk about them, but I've been working so hard. I'm not in the. I have to start thinking.
We're going to come back to you on those tricky movie-based questions. Let's talk about your film. Okay.
My film?
Well, it's Battle of the Sexes, and
Our film.
You're kind of the star. Before we actually explain the contents of the match, I just wonder whether you've been, because this happened a long time ago, so we're talking 1973. I wonder if you've been waiting to tell the story, or I wonder why you have been waiting until now. Why are we seeing this movie now, Billie Jean?
Well, they've had some documentaries in the States a little bit on it, but nothing to this extent. When I met with James Erskine, who's director, producer, and Zara Hayes. They might be here today. I don't know. Are they? Hi, kids. How's it going? We met where we had the reunion of the original 9, and the original 9 are 9 women that signed a $1 contract. We were in 1972 with Gladys Hellman. It was the birth of women's professional tennis, the way you know it today. And the 9 of us were willing to go out on a limb. So anyway, they were at the reunion we were having in Charleston, South Carolina, and we started talking, and they started to realize, okay, we've got to have more than this, and they started to think about how they wanted it to be, and they started talking with me, and we started to realize that the King Riggs match was also a big part of it, which was 3 years later in 73, and there was a lot writing on it. It was about the essence of the match was really about social change.
And one of the strong things about the documentary, which is a fantastic watch, is that it places the story with this match which you played against Bobby Riggs in this huge context, not just of women's tennis, but in terms of the place of women and social change and human rights and everything. So it's telling a very, very large story.
Correct. It was very symbolic of those times.
But so on behalf of everyone, who is this guy, Bobby Riggs? Because that's what a lot of people in this go, not just thinking now, but also in the early. Who is this joker?
Bobby Riggs was one of my heroes. He was #1 player in the world. He won the Triple Crown at Wimbledon in '39, and then the World War II really hurt his career. But I read everything about him. I knew everything about him. He was taught by a woman. He's from Southern California. I'm also from Southern California, so I used to hear oral history from a lot of different people. So I love this guy. But he followed me around for 2 years wanting me to play, and I said, no, I don't want to play. We've just started women's tennis. I'm exhausted. Because I was helping at every level of it. I was helping get sponsorship, and all kinds of things were happening. Own tournaments. Small businesswoman, and he just kept showing up every so often. And then one day I'm at the Virginia Slims of Detroit, and I'm in the lift with Margaret Smith Court, who's won more Grand Slams than anybody, 62 Grand Slams. And Margaret looks at me and says, I'm going to play Bobby Riggs. And I said, what? And I said, you're going to play Bobby Riggs? You've got to be kidding. I said, you have to win this match. This is not about tennis. This is about the women's movement. It's about human rights and all the things you just said, Simon. So she's going, yeah, okay, but I'm getting $35,000 for it. And I said, that's great, but whatever you do, just win the match so we don't have to worry about Bobby anymore. So anyway, she plays the match and loses badly, like 6'1", 6'2", terribly. I mean, it was terrible. And in the film, when you see the footage of the match against
Which
Bobby,
I don't think people will have seen before.
No, they won't, because I haven't seen it. I hadn't seen a lot of this footage, and James said they were going to throw it out. So somehow James or whoever at New Black Films, they found it, and it's just, I think without that, it wouldn't tee it up. It wouldn't set the tone. It wouldn't set the table. So it's amazing you have that we have that footage, because that really does set it up. And then when Margaret lost, then I knew I had to play, because I thought the women's tour was in trouble. And then we had this law that was passed in the United States. It was a very important law. It's called Title IX, June 23rd, 1972. So this is only a year later I'm playing this match. And what it was about any high school, college, or university that receives any federal funds that had to be, for the first time, spent equally on both genders, men and women. Before that, there was a lot of gender quotas in colleges and universities. For instance, if I wanted to go to Harvard and be a medical student, the classrooms were 5% women. So that really got rid of it. So I didn't want that law to be weakened, and I'd fought for that law too. I'd gone before the Senate and spoke and said we need to have this law. And it's really important that I didn't want to give anybody any reason to go backwards. Also with women's professional tennis, I didn't want us to go backwards. I didn't want people to go backwards in their thinking. You know, it's what people feel is so important, what they think, what they feel. And I wanted us to go a step forward. And I thought if I could win that match and have that kind of platform, maybe people would look at things differently. And I do get men coming up to me all the time now that saw that match when they were young boys. And now they have daughters and sons, or daughters, and they say it changed their whole life. They raise their children differently. They want equal opportunities for both their boys and their girls.
What's extraordinary about the film is that it does the thing that that a great documentary, whether it's a music documentary or a sports documentary, does. I mean, what I know about sport would not fill the back of a postage stamp. And I watched the documentary, and it seemed to me to be the most vibrant and engaging documentary about the rise of the women's movement. You got the voice of Gloria Steinem and Germaine Greer and these extraordinary cultural figures, and somehow finding their perfect focus in a subject about which I didn't know. I mean, I wasn't aware of the full extent of the match.
Most people aren't.
To the point that you're watching it on the edge of your seat, because there's a lovely moment when we hear, when the first match is played, that the very first thing you say is, well, now I've got to play him. Not got to play him because it's so much more than a tennis match. I've got to play him on principle. And I wonder whether, when you're looking back at it now, and particularly through the eyes of the documentary, which I think will engross anybody, whether they're interested in tennis or politics or whatever, but do you look back at that match now and think of it as a tennis match, or do you look at that match now and think of it as a political battle? I mean, which of the two was the most important?
Oh, it's not even close. It's a political battle. I knew exactly what was going on. I think that's what prepared me so well. Also, I absolutely respected Bobby. He's the reason I beat him. I understood him. I knew about him. I always tell younger people, the more you know about history, the more you know about yourself. And I love history. I love them. I love documentaries that are historical. I'm reading Thomas Jefferson right now, which is the third president of the United States. I mean, I love these books. I'd be reading your biographies for sure if you had them. So I love them.
Don't even go there. Just don't, all right?
Oh, is it that bad? Really? Okay.
No, there's so many things we can't say.
No, but you've made me keep thinking about movies. I keep thinking about all the actors I love.
But what about? I mean, also the theatre of that match. I mean, he's obviously a kind of larger than life character. There's all these TV things that he's doing before him, which he's saying outrageous things about women can't possibly compete.
And he was making a lot of money too.
Yeah, and you say at one point in the documentary, well, look, I'm promoting this thing and he's promoting it. It's almost like a marriage. I mean, it's a really strange combination of you and him in the middle of this great biggest, apparently the most watched tennis match ever. Still.
It still is. Unfortunately, it is. What people don't realize, 95% of the media is controlled by men. Okay, so I happen to be in a male arena because I'm playing Bobby, and that's why there was so much interest, to be honest. Because now the male aspect creates interest because they control the media and they're decision makers, and all of a sudden they're interested. and also this man versus woman. Athletically, it absolutely meant nothing to me because this man was as old as my father, literally. In fact, he was born the same year as my dad. And I used to say that before the match. I said, you guys, this doesn't mean anything athletically. It's about what you just said. It's about the political. I just wanted us to go forward. I wanted to start to change the hearts and minds of people to absolutely embrace the fact that whether you're a boy or a girl, everyone deserves equal rights and equal opportunities. Period. It should just be a given, and that's really what I wanted that match to say to the world.
Well, all these years later, watching that documentary, that match still says exactly that.
Did it say that?
Yeah, it really did.
Then it did what it was supposed to.
And also the suggestion in the film, very, very early on in your comments, you give us the impression that you almost became number one tennis player because of your belief in equal rights. That it was your belief in equal rights came before your desire to be a great tennis player.
Correct. Well, actually, when I was 11, I wanted to be number one in the world because I loved it so much. And I told my mom I found what I was going to do with my life. I didn't say I'm just going to be number one. I said I found what I'm going to do with my life because I remember that. When I was 12 years old, I had an epiphany. I can remember where I was at the Los Angeles Tennis Club, and I was thinking, gosh, everybody in tennis wears white shoes, white socks, white skirts, white clothes, and everybody that plays tennis is white. And the question I asked myself at 12 years old is, where is everybody else? That was the question I asked. And then I started thinking about the sport of tennis, and then I started thinking about society. And you have to understand, I was reading biographies like crazy as a child, too. I mean, I just loved history, and I loved how things were shaped and how people kept changing, going forward, backwards, forwards. But it was so obvious to me that I wanted tennis to be a big sport. In those days, it was amateur. People were making $14 a day. It was very controlled by national governing bodies. All these things that over time you just knew you wanted to change. So at 12 years old, really basically, and I probably couldn't articulate it when I was 12, but I basically dedicated my life, the rest of my life, to equal rights and opportunities for boys and girls, men and women. And that means equality, which means, and then I said, if I can be number one, maybe people will listen to me. Maybe. And so tennis became my platform for my real goals. So tennis actually was very secondary in my life as I went through life. Like Arthur Ashe and I used to talk about how we wanted tennis to be more hospitable and how we wanted to shape things. And of course, he was into human rights, and I was too. So we're born the same year, actually, 1943. So we're war babies. But it's amazing how lucky I am to have had this opportunity. I don't know why, but I always felt a sense of destiny as a child. I mean, when I was 7 years old, my poor mother, I told her I'm going to do something great with my life. I don't know what it is. I just know I'm going to do something great. She said, that's fine. Keep drying the dishes. We didn't have
That's
dishwashers.
kind of like Bobby Riggs would
we
have
didn't have
said.
dishwashers in those days. We didn't, a few of you can remember these days.
Wimbledon, as we've just been hearing a few moments ago, starting on Monday. Any Andy Murray fans in the house?
I hope so. Where are we? Hello.
Expectations very high, and he's winning stuff, and he won the Olympic gold medal.
He's got the goods now. The winning the gold was a very huge turning point for him, and I think that really helped his confidence. I thought he revealed his true self more since then, as far as his interviews. He allows himself to cry more. I mean, I think that's who he really is deep down, and I think that will help him be the best he can be. And he's definitely, 8 years ago I said he'd win Wimbledon, so he better hurry up. Because I thought he's got the goods. He's got the game. The main thing when he gets into a tough situation, a critical moment, he needs to put the pedal to the metal and be aggressive. Sometimes he tends to take the pedal off and then get into this passive retrieval mode, and he needs to really go forward because he's got the game. If he didn't have the game, it's one thing. He can play offense and defense as well as anybody. So he needs to be more offensive when he gets into these critical moments.
You think it might be his year?
Sure, why not? He's got a tough draw, though, everybody keeps telling me.
And what about the women's game? How healthy is that at the moment?
Well, they're both very healthy, but the top four men are probably the greatest ever in the history of our sport. And Murray's part of that four. With Federer, Nadal, Djokovic and Murray, these 4 players are the best ever in the history of our sport. So I think the men right now are at the peak of the peak for them. The women, a little more fluid as far as who's number 1, although right now Serena's back. As long as she's not injured, she's by far the best player that's ever lived.
When I was watching your movie, Billie Jean, I did find myself thinking, why didn't you, or was there any time when you considered women-only tournaments? When the men were being, the people that ran tennis were being as difficult as they were, and when there was that huge differential in the money. I mean, it was like 12 times.
Yes, we thought about it, but I really, personally, I just wanted us to be together. I'm all for, we're in this world together, men and women. I wanted us to have one association. They rejected us. And actually, yesterday was the 40th anniversary of the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association, which we did during a tournament. We did it at the Gloucester Hotel. It was a brand new hotel that year, and I thought we should be together. That was Plan B for me personally. May have been Plan A for some of the other women players, but I always thought as one association. And we didn't have to play always together either at tournaments. We could have had one voice. That was 40 years ago. And I always thought, what could we do off the court as well as on the court with one voice, the men and women together? Very few sports have high-profile men and women like we do. To me, we need to use it more and be good to each other. But I'm an idealist. My favorite movie, It's a Wonderful Life. That's where Mark and I are talking. I love that movie, okay? But I was trying to think, is there something more recent? And I'm thinking, well, I kept going back to it, but I was like...
Well, the problem with This Wonderful Life is, it's very, very hard to top because despite, people complain about Capricorn and all the rest of it, but the fact of the matter is it works, and it works because it's about the importance of people.
Yes. I have this saying in my speeches when I give speeches. You never know how a person's going to touch your life or how you're going to touch theirs. And every single person's an influencer, every single human being. And every single person's so important. And so when I see that movie, it just touches the fact you don't ever think little of yourself. And just remember, you just never know how you're going to touch another person's life or how they're going to touch yours. And that's why I think it's so important to be alert in life, not go through life asleep. Some of us, and I've caught myself I call it below the line, kind of going through life asleep, not paying attention and all this. And that's good sometimes when you're meditating or sleeping or you're on your own. That's fine. But when you're around people, I think it's really important. You just never know.
There's one thing I want to highlight, but we're going to have we're going to take our horse race in just a moment. We have the Coronation Stakes coming up, and we're going to divide the audience into supporting different horses.
This program is a strange mixture of
Queen
film and
Elizabeth
sport.
was so happy yesterday, huh?
She was delighted.
Did you see that photo of the Queen? Oh my God, I've never seen her so radiant. She was so happy.
Here is
her horse won.
Here's a hidden blessing from watching your movie. If the one thing that you miss about tennis now is the sound, the acoustic of old tennis balls on old tennis rackets. The Bobby Riggs Margaret Court match, which appears unbelievably slow, but the sound that those old tennis rackets make is completely different. It sounded terrific, I thought.
It is, but we were slow and dead slow the way we played. We're like pitter-pattering through the tulips compared to the kids today. I'm a big believer in that every generation gets better.
And if people are listening,
do you think actors are better today than the old ones?
No, I think it's a constant. I think people have a worrying habit of looking back to the past of movies and saying it wasn't like when I was a kid. I think there are the same number of great movies and great actors and great directors at all times, but everyone feels a sort of nostalgia for the past. That's not to say that I don't think that Casablanca and It's a Wonderful Life and Seventh Seal are, rarely matched, but a film comes along like Pan's Labyrinth, which is as good as anything from the last 100 years of cinema, I think.
I think actresses probably have gotten better every generation because they look at the older movies and they learn from them and they just get a little bit better, just like everybody pushes the envelope. I think the actors today are fantastic.
But
I saw a movie called Jackie. Have you seen that one?
No.
Holly Hunter's in it. She's a friend of mine. And I found it on demand on the television at home in New York City where I live. And I wrote her and I said, I just saw your movie, Jackie. She goes, I didn't think it was released in the States. She says, are you sure? I don't think it got released. I said, well, I saw it. Anyway, there's these two Dutch girls. One's a singer, Van Houten or something. Anyways, it was good.
We should look that up.
This is a better film critic than I am.
We should look that up. Just one other point to make about your movie Battle of the Sexes, which is being screened tonight and also on Sunday here at the film festival. And I was just looking up at your director, Zara.
And James and Zara?
Yeah, Zara was actually texting during that last comment, which is against the Widdertainment rules of conduct, actually. But we'll let you off, Zara, as it is your movie, and you've probably heard all this before. But
Poor thing.
But as I understand
I get to see it tonight for really complete, don't I, for the first time.
Okay. Yeah, the key thing is, and we have to finish, Billie Jean. The key thing is, Zara is not she's not a tennis fan, but like Mark. But this documentary is for everybody. You just have to be interested in life, really, to enjoy the Battle of the Sexes, which is being screened tonight and on Sunday. Billie Jean King, a privilege. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
I like your hair, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you.
My hair or his hair?
Both of you. I like this look, and then I like the Elvis Presley look.
Yeah. And there we have it.
There we
have it.
Thanks, Simon.
Billie Jean, thank you very
Thanks,
much
Mark.
indeed.